Hello everyone, Luke here. Welcome to this video where I talk about one team in particular's chances in the F1 2021 season and why it could be a make or break year for this team. Now, as you might be aware, there's not a lot of changes happening to the cars for the 2021 season when you compare them with 2020's. A few changes to the floor at the back of the car, but largely the cars are going to remain unchanged. But there is one big exception to that rule, and that is McLaren. Of course, the change McLaren are making is that they're moving away from the Renault engines and back to Mercedes, back to the team that brought them so much success in the 90s and noughties, with 2 world titles for Mika Hakkinen and one, of course, for Lewis Hamilton in 2008. Now, they stayed with Mercedes up until the end of 2014, when Ron Dennis decided, seeing as it was the hybrid era, they needed a factory engine deal, so they moved back to Honda, a manufacturer they'd been with since the 80s and 90s. And I don't think it's too harsh to say that the best thing that came out of the 3 years with Honda were Fernando Alonso's radio messages. No podiums across them 3 years and plenty of reliability troubles. McLaren got fed up only 3 years into that 10-year deal and then decided to move with Renault, and it's fair to say they've made steady progress over that time, but they were just missing that last little piece, and they were hoping that with the new regulations originally coming in for 2021, this would give them an opportunity to get the Mercedes engines in and really make that boost up to the top. Of course, when COVID hit, it was decided the regulations would be pushed back an extra year to 2022, so McLaren have now got to squeeze this Mercedes engine into a car it wasn't really designed for. The last team to try this, of course, was Brawn, and they didn't do too bad with it, if we're being honest. Plus, they've got a new driver in Daniel Ricciardo, so this year could go many different ways for McLaren, but I think there's 3 real distinct possibilities of how 2021 will go for the Woking team. Now, in my opinion, the most likely option is that they pretty much just stay as they were in 2020, and any gains that they make from the Mercedes engine are negated by the losses on not being able to concentrate on their car as much and probably not being able to get the best out of their package. This probably means that, a bit like in 2020, they're fighting for the top of the midfield. They managed 3rd place last year, and they got some occasional podiums, and I don't think that would be too bad of a way to move into the new era of Formula 1. Of course, the flip side to the previous situation is that the engine integration does not go very well at all, and because they've concentrated on that rather than improving the car, we could see McLaren drop back in the midfield. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second all of a sudden they'll be struggling to fight with Williams, Alfa Romeo and Haas. I think even if things go pretty badly for the Woking team next year, 7th is probably the worst that they could expect to do, but in this situation they're probably going to have 2 very frustrated drivers. Firstly, Daniel Ricciardo is 32 in 2021. How long would he want to hang around a team that is struggling to fight for points, never mind podiums and victories, when he sees some of his contemporaries and the team he was formerly at, Red Bull, probably picking up a few victories? And also, Lando Norris. He was very evenly matched with Carlos Sainz throughout the 2 years they were teammates. In fact, both seasons, Norris just edged the qualifying battle ahead of the Spaniard, although Carlos did look to have that extra bit of pace in the race, part of which probably comes down to experience. If he sees Ferrari making a big step forward and jumping the McLaren team, he's probably going to be pretty frustrated and might even want out himself. Now, when Ricciardo was signed by McLaren to replace the Ferrari-bound Carlos Sainz, it was described by some in Formula 1 as the meme team. We've seen Ricciardo and Norris get on really well in press conferences before. It's fair to say they both enjoy having a laugh and a joke with each other. To be fair, not too dissimilar to the relationship Carlo and Lando had, and that did work very well over the last 2 years, and I think there are 2 primary reasons for this. Number 1, they were very evenly matched. In qualifying, Norris had the edge. In the race, Sainz had the edge ever so slightly, so one driver wasn't constantly getting beaten by the other and therefore not affecting morale. And number 2, they weren't constantly fighting for podiums and wins, were they? There's a bit of a difference between fighting for 7th and 8th with each other, or 5th and 6th, rather than fighting for 1st and 2nd. I mean, we've seen at McLaren, famously Alonso and Hamilton, and a bit further back in the past, Senna and Prost, having 2 drivers wanting to be number 1 when you're at the top can cause a bit of an issue. So if McLaren do improve this year, that's something they might have to deal with. And I personally think the first problem, one driver constantly beating the other, could rear its head as well. In my opinion, Daniel Ricciardo is a better driver than Carlos Sainz and might just beat Norris a bit more convincingly, in a similar way to what the Australian did with Esteban Ocon last year. Now, if this happens, and I'm not saying it's guaranteed to, but let's say Ricciardo is constantly up there fighting for a few podiums, whereas Lando Norris, at best, is a bit lower down the midfield, maybe fighting the Aston Martins and the Alpines. In that situation, how long would McLaren stay patient for? Sergio Perez, he had 1 year at McLaren. It didn't go well. They got rid. Kevin Magnussen, he had 1 year at McLaren. It didn't go as well as they'd have hoped. They got rid. They're a very different team to what they were in 2013 and 2014. I do wonder how patient they'd be, because we've already seen from Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship, when things are close, you really need two top performing drivers. Otherwise, you're going to constantly struggle on the strategy. Of course, there are many other unknowns in the 2021 season which might determine a team's finishing position in the Constructors' Championship. Out of the 5 main midfield teams from last year, they've all got new driving lineups. Aston Martin have brought in Sebastian Vettel. Alpine have got Fernando Alonso back at the Enstone-based team for a 3rd time. We've also got Ferrari signing Carlos Sainz, as we mentioned earlier, and AlphaTauri have brought in the Japanese debutant Yuki Tsunoda. And with how close the teams were last year, that consistency could be what gets you 3rd in the championship once again if your teammates are working well together. Because let's be honest, McLaren probably didn't have the 3rd fastest car last season. They might not have even had the 4th fastest car on some occasions. You can definitely say there were certain tracks that suited the Renault better than the McLaren, and it was clear that Racing Point, they got points deducted, so that knocked them down in the championship, and they got a pole and a victory. In big extenuating circumstances, I admit, but they clearly had a quicker car than some of the others. It's just COVID diagnoses and mechanical problems cost them a big chunk of points. So that could be a similar situation again. It all depends on who does the best job on that particular day in history around that particular track. And we still don't know what tracks we're racing at yet. F1 originally had a 23 race calendar, but the COVID-19 pandemic has once again made some changes. China has been cancelled. That's been replaced with the Imola Grand Prix. Australia has been pushed back further in the season. I think there'll be some more changes. A few of the street circuits could go. Who knows whether we'll see Portimao, Nürburgring and Istanbul Park coming once again. So the teams are going to have to be dynamic and fluid here, and there could be a lot of different circumstances depending on who finishes top on that midfield. Thank you very much everyone for watching this video where I've talked through McLaren's chances for the 2021 season. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe if you have, and leave a comment down below on anything else you'd like me to cover in the world of Formula 1 and motorsport in general. I am aiming to do a few more of these talking videos over the coming weeks and months. You can check out the rest of my social medias down in the description below, and I'll see you next time around. Goodbye.